Good morning, everyone. I am Brian Piles, the State Director for Career and Technical Education at the Michigan Department of Education. And I'm excited to host today a presentation between the Workforce Intelligence Network, commonly referred to as WIN, and the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity and the MDE. I've had several conversations over the past probably 18 months and tightened up that conversation with Lori Huber at an apprenticeship workshop during the month of May. And we were talking about the of EV jobs and training and what WIN is continuing to do. Also, what the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, is continuing to do is several agencies are working with our school district programs. And oftentimes when we think of EV, and from my perspective, when I think of EV, I think about automobiles, manufacturing, and the technicians who will repair them. And as I'm having conversations over the past 6 to 9 months, learning there are so many other sectors that interface with this transition to an EV world. When my conversation was occurring in May with Lori, we were talking about an opportunity to really bring this conversation forward so that our leaders across the state and our counties and our school districts and our educators, along with our leaders in our community college system and those faculty members, can start to broaden everyone's understanding of the number of sectors and roles that we need to train for so that we are on the cutting edge. And it's incumbent upon us as leaders to bring this information to our program instructors so they're aware and bring them training opportunities so that they can learn as this is new information so that their students have the appropriate exposure to EV. And so they're learning it in a timely manner. Also thinking about setting a mindset for people that are in our programs that EV is going to be a continuous learning curve for them for probably decades to come, and to be prepared to learn more that upon leaving us with a certification or a credential, it's going to continue to evolve and kind of change and shift that mindset that people of my generation, you completed your degree and you were supposed to be good until you retired. You got your credential and you should have been all set. And that did happen for decades in our country, but life is a little bit different. So it's my pleasure to bring this presentation forward today and to introduce Lori Huber, the WIN Workforce Project Manager. Lori, thank you for being here today, putting together this training for us, and always being such an amazing partner to the Michigan Department of Education. Good morning.
Good morning. And thank you, Brian, for that great introduction. It's great to see over 30 folks here to listen what will be very informative. It'll probably leave you with some questions, which it should. As Brian noted, this is an emerging space, and we're excited to bring some of the key partners that have been involved in EV Jobs Academy. I'll quickly introduce them briefly, and they're each going to bring a message. We have an hour to get about 2.5 years worth of work in front of you, but we're hoping that this will be foundational for more work in the fall as other pieces come to fruition. There's a lot of work in this space. So I'm going to give you a snippet of EV Jobs Academy. I mean a snippet, and there'll be materials after this. We have two wonderful employer partners, Paul Bowser from Roush, our vice president. He'll give you a little wave. And I see Ann Thompson is just jumping on from Ford. She took a well-deserved vacation, and she'll be visiting with you briefly in this space around career and technical education. Kevin Chow from Michigan Department of Labor, apprenticeship specialist, will give you a snippet of the MARC, the Michigan Apprenticeship Readiness Certificate. Some of you may or may not be aware of that resource. And then Dr. Amy Lee will be visiting about the Michigan Workforce Training and Education Collaborative, again, a key component to our delivery and scaling curriculum. And Mac Dodds, who's here with us as Talent Development Liaison from Leo. He will bring us into the closing section. So let's get started. I've got the objectives on the slide deck. Certainly, we're here to share some of the things Brian and I mentioned, provide information as well as career pathway information to generate conversations about your programs. What is the EV Jobs Academy? It launched in March of 2022. It's an employer-led collaborative designed to respond to specific knowledge and skill demands for the automotive mobility and electrification industry. Partners have been working with employers to identify and design post-secondary curriculum and training that meets the employer's critical occupation skill needs and that meet their unique needs in both design, them being the employers, what they need in terms of delivering design, making sure it's customizable and flexible. The EV Jobs Academy is a statewide initiative, engaging partners from across the state, including the Upper Peninsula and all 16 Michigan Works agencies who have access to training funds. Promotional and outreach efforts are inclusive of all partners. This, I know you can't read this, and I'll share the flow chart with you, but the EV Jobs Academy is facilitated by MAGMA, Michigan Alliance for Greater Mobility. Ann Thompson is our facilitator and also in workforce with Ford Motor Company. You'll see several pillars at the bottom. You can see that the immense space and effort that has gone into EV Jobs Academy. At the center there, you see in orange is our education and training. All the work in the employer-led model has been around to identify gaps and design curriculum in order to fill those gaps around mobility and electrification. Discussions at the full collaborative level have engaged our employer partners, navigated emerging occupations, shared data and research. It is an opportunity for each of the other 6 teams to provide updates and designed for the employer to convene and inform one another, make connections, and build relationships. What you see here are the in-demand occupations. This list was created, the top 10 occupation list was created through the employer partnership, which was identified, providing the foundation for the education and training team. We did this through a gap analysis conducted through our leads who brought together not only employer partners, but provider partners and other stakeholders that weighed in on those gap analysis, looking at facilities and spaces and curriculum. Of course, we have a number of CTE partners. I think there's about a dozen that have been part of the conversation as we navigated this on a regional basis. The employer-led model, which is how we navigated the EV Jobs Academy, has provided some of this gap analysis where we look at their hiring projections, look at real labor market information and those critical occupations, which in the last 2.5 years, things have evolved. Certainly those are ongoing, but these 10 stay pretty steadfast. There were actually 2 surveys a couple of years ago, and these occupations remain at the forefront, not in any particular order. So I wanted to make sure you understood how the occupations were identified. We're going to go into 2 employer presentations, and Paul Bowser is up first with Roush Enterprises, has been a dynamic leader not only in automotive, but defense industry, in the multiple tapestry of industries. We found that skills and competencies were quite similar, but how Roush and Ford have navigated this space, specifically to CTE, he's going to share some of his insight. So Paul, it is yours. Yeah, if you got off mute. That's all right.
I guess I'm not so technical this morning. So Paul Bowser with Roush Industries for about 29 years now, Vice President of our garage services and prototype divisions. Next slide, Lori. So Roush, just to give a quick background, Jack Roush started the company in 1976 with just about 10 employees and about just a touch under $1 million in revenue. And today we're 2023, 2024, we're 4,500 plus employees, 3 million square feet of shop and workspace, and 34 facilities across the U.S. Four of the main pillars of support that Roush provides are mobility, which of course is the automotive and anything that's on wheels and moves, defense, entertainment, and aerospace. And I think everyone knows Roush for the mobility sector, but not many folks know that we're in defense, entertainment, and aerospace. And there's some fairly large companies there that we're working for. That's just a small smattering of the broad range of customers that we deal with daily. Next slide. So getting involved in the EV Jobs Academy, we started off when it was still called MIREV in May of 2022, and a lot of different benefits that we've gained as an employer through being a part of that Jobs Academy. And the first is the interaction with industry in an open and non-competitive manner. We don't typically work directly with our competition to understand what the industry is doing, but this platform gives us an opportunity to do that and to put ourselves in a neutral stance with our competition to understand that they're seeing the same issues that we are. Exposure to industry perspectives outside of our business. So same with the competitive nature of our business. We don't typically share outside of what our business is experiencing with anyone else. And this platform gives us an opportunity to share those difficulties and know what industry is doing from many different perspectives. The opportunity to work with the post-secondary educators, working on training and focusing the content of that training into the specific areas that we need our employees to be skilled, reskilled, upskilled, and what we need our incoming employees to know and understand how to do. That platform is also an ability to voice some workforce concerns and what we see the model of industry doing and share those potential solutions with local, state, and federal government. And it also gives that two-way operation that says it's going to give us some visibility of what the roadblocks to government helping us in industry by identifying the roadblock and then figuring out how to move it out of the way if we can provide information or support in any way. Inclusion and decision making. So as we're looking at the training courses and classes that we want to try and get out there for our industry employees, it gives us some opportunity to help with that decision making and maybe redirect some focus on one area versus another. At the bottom, number 7, this was something that took me by surprise a little bit, but it was a simple solution that folks in industry, including myself and our company, did not necessarily identify with, and that's job descriptions and job posting terminology. We advertise, as far as industry goes, that we're looking for EV technicians and people that are trained in hybrid electric vehicles and other different types of electrified mobility. But we don't put that terminology on our job descriptions and our job postings when we put them out there. So someone that's seeking employment is putting these terms into their search and not finding anything because the descriptions and the postings don't have that content. So it's enabled us to physically go and update every job description that we have within Roush, 142 total job descriptions with different levels of each. And so it's a huge undertaking, but it was something that we never thought of. So it's been hugely beneficial to us to be able to change that. So moving to CTCs and CTEs and the benefits of engagement there. Roush has been involved here for about the last 5 years with a growing number of high schools that we engage with their CTC programs, 3 in total now, building relationships with our communities that we're working within. It is also giving us an opportunity to provide insight to curriculum and program development teams that are looking for new ways to provide education and hands-on experience to their students. It's engaging students to gain interest in future employment opportunities, and giving opportunity to experience those jobs through work-based learning, where students can take a portion of their CTC time and spend that with industry mentors in an actual work environment and be working on true and actual and real jobs. That work-based learning, which happens during the school year and is an unpaid opportunity, can turn into an internship when summer comes along. So currently, I think we've got 18 interns that are with us from our local high schools, and it gives them opportunity to work and be paid in a part-time employment during the summer. And then after graduation, we have opportunity for full-time employment. And the key to the internship during the summer and the graduate is that, as with most industry and employers, you have to serve some value of time before you gain your benefits. And because we've hired these students as part-time employees during the summer, and they are working roughly 90 days during that summer month, they have already put in their time required for gaining benefits. So if they do hire on immediately after graduation, their benefits start immediately. And this gives the employers opportunity to disprove the stigma of industry as being dark and dirty, in that we can bring their students through, we bring the CTC instructors, the high school staff through our facilities, let them see where their students will be working. They're welcome to come and visit the shop while their students are here working, and speak with the mentors. And one of the things that we concentrate on during the CTC visits with our high school students is we work to develop soft and professional skills. So teaching these students the importance of showing up to work in the proper attire, getting here on time, making sure the details of punching into and out of the work site each day. And in the instance that they're not able to come to work, to know to call their supervisor or their manager to let them know. Those interactions are paramount in creating a new and successful employee. And then it also is providing a collaborative feedback stream that we can exchange ideas and notes with all the folks that are involved, both from the schools and the students, and we can provide input to them as well. And it's a collaborative feedback that allows us continuous improvement in that program.
Thanks, Paul. Very informative. Appreciate your insight as an employer. Ann Thompson, are you on the line?
Oh, I am. Can you see me?
Welcome back.
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and think this is just such an incredibly important topic. As always, Lori, I can't help but start anything I ever say by thanking you for keeping this together and keeping the train moving. You've done just an excellent job. And I also want to thank Brian for joining and his comments around this continuing to evolve for the future decades. I think is a really imperative thing to think about, and just really important when we start all this planning, because we have progressed quite quickly over the past 10 years, but that I think will continue to accelerate as we move forward. So I don't have any slides. I was just going to take a couple minutes to talk about the importance of CTE, how Ford is approaching this, and really, in all honesty, what I could just say is that Paul covered it all, ditto to everything that Paul just said. I think he was spot on. And one of the things he brought up that I didn't realize we're going to have an opportunity to talk about, but would like to just quickly mention, is the importance of this EV Jobs Academy and having the collective group together, because we're able to really find those like-minded individuals who are focused on the good and trying to really get into the K-12 space, into the community technical colleges, universities, get more individuals into these roles. And I don't think that's very prevalent. A lot of times we don't get to work across industry partners And then with people like Amy coming in and the support systems from that and from Mac and from yourself, it's just a really wonderful model that, as you know, is attempting to be replicated for the entire Southeast region of the United States. So kudos to all of you for all the work. From a CTE perspective, I think when I think about where we are and kind of where we will go, I think about the traditional pathways that we're taking right now with CTE, which includes, dual enrollment, ensuring that we're doing industry recognized certifications, trying to manage the expectations, because I think a lot of times what we have done is inadvertently, in our attempts to get more people into this industry from K-12, we've tried to get them with a hook, right? So it's like, oh, if you do these courses, then we'll guarantee an interview, or we'll guarantee an internship, or we'll guarantee something. And I think we probably need to take a step back from that and recognize the fact that these are all just building blocks that need to work together, and maybe focus more on the articulation of those programs instead of that immediate hook. Because I do think that these are people who are going to be constant learners and in a continuously learning process. So when I think back to when I was growing up, we would have like maybe one industry visit throughout the year, and that was it. And then now we've kind of progressed where companies are doing more to work directly inside of the school. So we're bringing in curriculum, we're bringing in equipment, we're bringing in people who are able to come and do maybe a guest lecture or something of that nature. We're bringing things to the students, which is also incredibly important. And what I want to think about and maybe leave with those next steps is, what is that next iteration of that? How can we change that opportunity where maybe a Ford employee comes into a classroom, instead of that being, a lecture or a video, how can we bring in, VR or bring in AI or something that really helps that student understand what all of these different evolutions in battery manufacturing looks like, what the OEMs look like, and how that will continue to progress to get more people into these professions and into these careers, because we really do have a lack of excitement around advanced manufacturing. And it's a wonderful place to be, right? And I think that the other thing I would think about within CTE is, I know a lot of what we focus on is on the technical side, but there's a lot of non-technical programs and occupations that could be maybe either attached with those CTE programs on those tracks, or maybe something where we could even get people who are in non-traditional programs over towards these technical roles. And I'm thinking about all of the different things that surround manufacturing that aren't necessarily that technician, but around, project management and communications and the IT portion and HR and art and design and all of these different things that I don't think that, people between the ages of, 5 and 18 necessarily put together. And then the final thing I would say that I think is really great is if we could find some ways to do a better job of hooking in the parents through these CTE courses and getting them into different pathways that also lead to opportunities. I think that's another space where we could really work together collaboratively. But those were just my notes. I really appreciate all this work, and Ford stands behind this. We've been working with a lot of schools. I'm working the Marshall Project, I'm working in Tennessee, working in Kentucky, really trying to identify how do we create these continuous pathways into Ford. So thank you so much for the time, Lori. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Anne, for jumping on post-vacation. Great points. It does align very nicely to the work. So thank you, Anne. Have a great week. We now move to Kevin with apprenticeship specialist, who's going to give us a snap of the mark. So Kevin, it's all yours. So you're going to share your screen.
Cool. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. So I am pinch hitting for my colleague, Callan Eschenberg. He is the program manager for the mark. So hopefully I won't strike out with everybody, but I'll just go right through the fundamentals of what the mark is, the levels that exist. And then, if any additional questions, we can have a little bit of discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me 1 second. All right. Okay. All right. So everybody can see my screen. All right, I'm just going to bring it all the way back up here. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Okay. Everything looks good on your side, Lori? I just want to check.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. All right. So the mark, what is it? It is the Michigan Apprenticeship Readiness Certificates. So this is a program deliverable from one of our USDL grants that we were awarded back in 2020. So I'll just, like I said earlier, I'll go right through the fundamentals and, having a little bit of understanding of what's the whole big picture about what the mark is. Okay, so the purpose, we'll start with the purpose. So in Michigan, we have high quality apprenticeship readiness programs or pre-apprenticeship programs in the state. Now, the challenge that we have learned is that the programs exist, but the connection for pre-apprentices once they complete the pre-apprenticeship program, the connection of going into a registered apprenticeship program is not always there. And so that's the disconnect that we're trying to improve, for individuals that go into a pre-apprenticeship program. So basically, what the mark will be able to do is it will be able to recognize high quality apprenticeship readiness programs to help residents that leads into a registered apprenticeship program opportunity. And then so you'll see that once I go through Mark 1 and Mark 2 about how that direct connection will happen. So additionally, the mark provides, ensure properly trained individuals into a registered apprenticeship program, which is why, the whole big picture of the quality part comes into play. It confirms job seekers have achieved a defined competency and skills in a program based on USDL quality pre-apprenticeship elements. And I'm going to cover that in the next slide as well, as in what is a USDL quality pre-apprenticeship program. It also takes the least common denominator approach for fundamental knowledge and skills at the industry level. And then it will be an industry recognized credential, as in it will be issued by a program sponsor with USDL, and then it will be provided to the participant, and that is how they would have that credential. And then it also makes that gap of entering a registered program more of a direct connection. Okay. So the endorsement piece. So the endorsement is that, the mark has two types. There's a level 1 and there's a level 2. And I'll cover both of them in detail. So now by having it as a, industry recognized credential, with the mark, it can serve as a credential meeting WIO requirements and a post-secondary recognized credential in Perkins 5 indicator. So it adds additional value for other programs and even participants, because if you're WIO eligible, you may be able to receive additional benefits to support your barriers for training and employment. Right. So this slide here is really important. And the reason why is because this is what USDL's definition of a quality pre-apprenticeship program. So they recently, had it official. This is like back in 2023. So it's just like, a year ago or less. So the elements of a quality pre-apprenticeship program is really important because, before USDL had, these parameters, everybody, they had, quality pre-apprenticeship programs, but it was all in different types of, formats, and it was all in different types of, approaches. So it's not consistent, and that's the big challenge. So now USDL is making it consistent, where they identified, specific parameters. So first, training curriculum is aligned with the skill needs of employers. Access to educational and career counseling and other supportive services, directly or indirectly, for the participant. Hands-on, meaningful learning activities that are connected to education and training activities, such as exploring career options, understanding how skills acquired through coursework can be applied for future career, opportunities to attain at least one industry recognized credential, and then lastly, a partnership with one or more registered apprenticeship programs that assist in placing individuals who complete the pre-apprenticeship program in a registered apprenticeship program. So that number 5 is like, that's a big deal, right? So now it's not just, a pre-apprenticeship program that somebody goes through and then, you're kind of waiting for opportunities. This is now, it's something that's going to give you a direct, facilitation or a direct, connection into a registered apprenticeship program. So next is the definitions or a program, review of what the marks are. So the first piece I'm sector. Here, the Mark 1 is focused on a specific industry, right? So, and then you'll get a little bit more of a clear understanding of the distinction between level 1 and level 2. But the Mark 1 is very broad. It's just basically, for an industry sector. So if we're talking about EV, we're talking about advanced manufacturing. So that's the industry we're looking at. So the criteria of the Mark 1 is that it must be aligned with the USDO training and employment notice quality criteria, which is what we just kind of went through with the 5 parameters here, right? And then the next piece that it must have is it must include a curriculum that meets baseline needs for all industry sector occupations covered. Now, it's within that industry, so it's very broad, okay? And then it may be a portion of high school senior portfolio, work-based learning requirement. It also may be incorporated with other current industry recognized credentials. So this is kind of like a broad, description of what the Mark Level 1 is. And so what it will do is it includes facilitated entry or articulation into your registered apprenticeship program. Okay, so these are some of the I guess verbiage that I want to point out, because once we take a look at what the Mark Level 2 is, you'll see the distinction, right? So here, level 1, it's industry focus. It has to have, a specific curriculum that links into that industry. And then obviously it has to include facilitated entry or articulation to your registered apprenticeship program. Now, level 2. All right. So level 2 is it confirms readiness for entry into a registered apprenticeship program, specified industry and occupation. Okay. So now what this means is that if we're going to talk about EV, we're talking about advanced manufacturing, but we're talking about even a specific occupation. So you could just, so for example, it could be, a mechatronics technician, or it could be, any type of specific occupation that is in advanced manufacturing. So it's much more narrow, but because it's more narrow, it assures that individual is very well qualified to enter a registered apprenticeship program in the example of advanced manufacturing. So the requirements of a Mark Level 2 is that it must include a portion of related technical instruction outcomes required in the standards of the program, or it's in the Appendix A, and it's in the RTI section that it very clearly states that this pre-apprenticeship program from this program sponsor is directly connected to the Mark. And so it makes it a lot more official, and it's a lot more committed. It also must include a portion of the OJT, on-the-job training skills and or competencies required by the program itself. So again, it's referencing the work process schedule, and that means it has to have specific, it has to have some specific competencies coming from the industry into that specific occupation. It must be recognized by sponsors, granting credit for prior experience, and include registered apprenticeship program standards. So this is another kind of level up, where it must allow granting of credit when a pre-apprentice enters a registered apprenticeship program. So for example, if we're looking at mechatronics technician as an example, so that's a 3-year program. So if an individual goes through a Mark Level 2 program sponsor, and let's say that individual has have gained more competency based on their work experience or education, instead of, let's say, doing a full 3 years, hypothetically, they could be awarded, let's just say, 6 months or maybe a year of that training. And instead of starting at year 1, they're starting at year 2, and they will complete, in 2 years. But that it just basically says it's allowed to do that if you're going to be a Mark 2 endorser. Okay, so the level 2 for the Mark is the language here is that it's a direct alignment with registered apprenticeship programs. So it includes articulation credit for prior learning, registered apprenticeship program standards. So this is much more committed between the program sponsor and obviously with the Mark the Mark expectations. All right, so those are so I just kind of went through what the Mark 1 and level 2 is, the distinction between them. And then the next piece is that how does a program sponsor become an endorser? Okay, so the Michigan Department of Economic Opportunity, basically UWD, we endorse program sponsors to be Mark endorsers, either level 1 or level 2. So the requirements include the partners, stakeholders apply for the certificate of recognition. will design and implement the certificates for a registered apprenticeship program in the region or industry. The partners will include appropriate mark language in the USDO registered apprenticeship program standards. The registered apprenticeship program stakeholder will apply to be a state for the will be applied to be endorser for the state with the mark, and then you would basically submit your information to our email, and then it would get reviewed, and then obviously there would be refinements with additional feedback from the approval process. So that's kind of like a really quick overview of the mark with the time frame that's available. So there you go. I'm just gonna toss it back to you, Lori.
Very good. Thank you. I know there's a lot of information there. And I'm sure the Office of CTE might have a broader presentation later, but it was a great overview. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you pitch hitting today. Dr. Amy Lee has joined us from the Michigan Workforce Training and Education Collaborative, and I was able to get her lovely slides.
I made it work. Thanks, Lori.
Yep.
Thank you for having me. I am the president of what we call MW Tech for short, because Michigan is all about acronyms here. And the collaborative, while in theory has been a new nonprofit, we're actually going into the end of our first actual fiscal year. The thought of the collaborative has been around since 2009, when we started as kind of a group of community colleges that created a consortium together. The focus was really it was employer driven. How do we help solve some of our healthcare shortages and get the training that we need? And so we kind of did a broader approach versus one local community college creating a program that probably wouldn't run more than a year or so because you just don't have access to the training and the number of sites to do that type of education. We expanded across, really, it became across the state. We train healthcare students literally in almost every county of the state now, which is amazing. But when the EV Jobs Academy, or MyRev back then, came to me, a part of the grant that they had noted there needed to be kind of a statewide access, and what could they have from a learning system platform to do that. And we were quickly brought forward as a group that was already doing that. We have really morphed and expanded beyond the idea of a consortium model. We really have now kind of 4 pillars that we focus on. And our true number one focus is the side of the employer, to make sure that whatever education and training that we're out there supporting, whether it's through a community college, a third-party vendor, whoever our employers say are going to provide the education needed for their employees, we're there to help support and give access to resources really from a statewide perspective. So our vision is really to align the education and training across the state. Many of you may not know, and I say this often, Michigan's an autonomous state when it comes to actually a lot of our business models. Our community colleges and universities are independent and they're ran by their board of directors or their board of trustees. They work more in a district base versus a statewide approach. And so sometimes if you look at a map, our universities will extend statewide, but our community colleges kind of look like they're broken into kind of county divisions, and sometimes not even across all counties, which does leave areas within the state without access to true full education. And so MW Tech has really become that kind of centralized location to help support all regions of the state of Michigan. If you want to fast to the next slide, Lori. So kind of our 4 main focus areas that we support. You can see we do the collaborative programs, but the new biggest thing that we're really diving into is the work-based e-learning center. That's kind of become that place that we've talked about when the MyRev EV Jobs Academy first launched. Like, where do we put that? What's interesting is having the platform that we do, we have the ability to almost create a library of online workforce education that comes with certificates. And it can come from a community college, it can come from vendors. we're working, in fact, there'll be a large announcement here very soon. We're working with Skill Fusion. They actually have a certification for what they call electric vehicle supply equipment diagnostic techs. So they help on the computer side when the EV charging stations go down. So we always think kind of the electrician side of it, where the power supply is coming in, and you forget that it's actually a computer as well. So maybe students that aren't hyper focused on like the electrical or the hands-on piece, they may be computer oriented, and that's a field that they can also go into. And those types of certificates, they're virtual, they're available, and we focus really heavy with our colleges to try to help identify ways to make those experiential learning opportunities. So when our high school kids come out with the certificates and they choose to go on to the college, they have the ability to earn that credit for the work that they've done. And so we really have continued to serve that area. Another interesting piece of this, the Learning Center, that also will have a big announcement this summer, is the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office reached out to us and thought, wow, look at what you're doing with the EV Jobs Academy and helping share. We have learning that we've actually created and developed, and we want to be able to give certificates. How can we get that learning out free to our education community, community colleges, our high school students? And so they're building learning that can be stacked and could be added to classroom content. If students are in entrepreneurial classes, business classes, they could be taking any of those types of courses and added to the content and delivered for free to those students. So we really have been focused on trying to find ways to build and expand access to everyone. Lori, if you want to go to the next slide. These are kind of our big components. Communities drive policy and decisions. Sometimes we kind of get caught in the policies and decisions from maybe a board or a group that were 50 years ago, and they become kind of internal legacy policies in many of our institutions. And there are things that we can do together to bridge some of those, what could appear as barriers, and maybe they really aren't even barriers, we just believe that they are. So when I sit down with whether it's employers, the community colleges, any educator, we kind of talk about what we believe the realities are, what we can do differently to try to stretch it. I am all about gray. You'll hear me say that. Nothing is ever black and white. There's always a way to figure out how to do something new. And so creating strategies to help support the educational community to really meet the goals of the employers and the things that they're saying we need. Because at the end of the day, if our students don't have the jobs, right, then there's probably not a reason for us to be super focused in that space. And so I think we have a lot of opportunity to expand some of our programs, because a lot of times you hear hands-on are required in order to do things. We have learned how to use virtual reality. We're partnering with like the Michigan Manufacturing Association, SME Tooling U, the Ignite programs, so the Prime programs, Ignite programs, and trying to find resources like mobile labs and things that we can bring to all of the areas of the state of Michigan to ensure that our students truly receive a high quality education, regardless of the resources that a community may have. That I think we owe it to the students and to our employers. So that's kind of our big focus, is just finding new things, new ways to do things. So I'm always available if anyone has questions about MW Tech or ways that we can help support. I'm really excited to get some of these new launch things out there for everyone. I just think it's going to be amazing, amazing for all of us in the educational community. Thanks, Lori.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. Those are some great pillars to think about. We were excited to have Mac join us, EV Jobs Academy. He's hit the ground running the last few months. He's here to kind of bring that home, if you will, and some exciting things that are happening on the horizon. So, Mac, all you.
Thanks, Lori. As Lori mentioned, my name is Mac Dodds. I'm a talent development liaison with Leo Sector Strategies. Just very excited to be here today. I think what I'm going to talk about is the Federal Electric Vehicle Workforce Hub, which is very exciting to the state. But before I get going into that, I'm just looking at my notes now, and I can't help but notice that the top of my notes is a federal, state, local partnership for advanced mobility workforce. And I think that kind of hits the nail on the head about the opportunity that I'm going to be talking about with the federal workforce hub. It really is at all three levels of the federal, the state, and the local communities, making sure that we provide opportunities for all of our individuals within these spaces to give them opportunities moving forward. I know Brian opened up with, I didn't know how big this EV space was, right? And at first it could be a little daunting, but to me that's opportunity. That's opening doors to people to find their niche within an industry that we all believe in and is heavily invested in. And we're very excited. So a little background on the Federal Workforce Hub. So President Biden has announced that the U.S. Department of Energy and U.S. Department of Labor will partner with Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity to create the Michigan Electric Vehicle Workforce Hub. So this initiative is aligned with the Biden-Harris administration, the roadmap to support good jobs, and works to ensure that every American has access to high quality training, education, and services that provide a path to a good career without leaving their community or having to leave their community. It is also building off the existing work that Leo and Wynn have undertaken through the strategic initiatives such as EV Jobs Academy. So the work so far has been so tremendous that, you know, we're starting to get that federal backing right now, and it's really cool to be a part of. And as we work through that, so this announcement came at the end of April. So we're really only about a month and a half into working with our federal partners. So we're still trying to build that framework out, but I think this group is going to be heavily involved in. And some of the workforce goals that the White House has mentioned to us is making sure that we're looking at apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs, development of those career pathways within the industry, scaling of career exposure programs already available, and then also experiential learning. So I know that a lot of the work that we've been talking about so far today has been about those partnerships. Some words that I've just heard from our speakers so far are partnerships, engagement, development, collaboration. I think on Paul's slides alone, he's got engagement, opportunity, develop, and collaborate right in front of us. And I think that's a really good way of showing how our employers can partner with our younger generation to show all the great careers and jobs within this space. And I think our federal partners are really going to help us do that, right? Where they're going to allow us to have more resources at the table and allow for that collaboration and information gathering to understand what employers need, what our trainers need, what our CTE programs need, what our apprenticeship programs need to make sure that we're opening as many doors as possible for everyone and all the students and job seekers within the state. So we are working through right now with our federal partners on exactly how that work plan is going to look. It's been very exciting for me and our team to be able to work with them on a weekly basis and understand, you know, kind of the federal goals behind everything, but also, you know, from a state and local level. And I think we have a couple bullets here at the bottom, and the three that really stick out are statewide collaboration platform. And that's where this group and groups that we get to talk to throughout the state really come into play. We have to know what's going on the ground level to make sure that we are available to get those resources and information to where we need them. Also looking at resources and navigations. What are those gaps right now? How can we fill those? How can we offer more opportunities for everyone that's involved? And also a policy engine, right? How can we use and leverage all the work that's being done to increase our policies or find new policy to make sure that the resources are there and that the state can kind of be at the forefront of that EV transition. So very exciting work. There's going to be a lot more detail to come over the next couple months. I think it's okay for me to say that we're looking to have boots on the ground in September from our federal partners. So we're working towards that right now with a lot of other information and resources to come. I wish I had more for you, but that's what we have right now, and it's a very exciting time. So if you are interested in being a part of that conversation, you can email. I'll put it in the chat, and I'll send it to Lori after as well. She asked me for it on Friday, and I misunderstood her question, so that's on me. But we'll make sure to get that information over to everyone, and I'll pass it over to Lori to kind of close the loop and send us home. Thank you.
Thanks, Mac. Appreciate all that information. Exciting times ahead. What you see here on this slide, and yes, the slide deck, among some other resources, I'll forward on to Sheila and Brian's office, and they'll get all those out to you with the recording. The career profiles and pathways are not only available on the My Auto Mobility, which is the MAGMA website. The Michigan.gov EV Jobs Academy has a link to the most recent recognized curriculum. I'll talk about that in a second. Like I said, you're going to be leaving with some questions. And then the MW Tech website is there. And there's contact information. One of the teams that you may have noticed on this flow chart was outreach and recruitment. If you have an activity coming up this year, we have a QR code there. We'd love to know about it as we partner with the Global Epicenter of Mobility and other partners. We want to make sure they have information around EV Jobs Academy. So you're welcome. And again, you'll get all this after the fact. So you've gotten a perspective from employers. You've got the MARC tool, the Michigan Apprenticeship tool, which is an amazing pathway to not only tap into some of the pieces Ann and Paul talked about. It is more than just, it's not dark and dirty. As we make that transition from ICE to EV, the same skills are needed. They've just added new ones, whether that's safety, battery technology, or just the software and cybersecurity. The EV charging stations alone have more than 6 career pathways. So when you're talking about diagnostic, which Amy mentioned, there's just so many transferable skills within this industry, and it's exciting for whomever may be considering the tech side, the cybersecurity, or really want to get in the car. And it's not just about cars, it's light electric vehicles, whether that's e-bikes, scooters, etc. It's just an amazing space. So hopefully we'll be able to do more come next year. Someone has asked some questions in the chat. I welcome any of the presenters to look at it. One of them's asking about free programming for high school. Part of the grant, I know a couple of CTEs have been partners, have invested in staff training. That's been one of the resources that, again, that partnership with the employer can help address. If you need to train, there certainly are some proven programs outside of Michigan, but we're trying to build those ecosystems here. I think part of it is taking stock of what you heard today. If you want to pursue something that eventually this EV workforce hub may become that broader picture, but we're happy to connect you with partners in your region today. But as you get ready to take a summer break, please take a summer break. We all need that. Let's make sure you take advantage of that, and we come back together in the fall and see where everybody's plugging in. But happy to take any of those emails, calls, meet one-on-one. Amy, I believe Ben Cruz was listening in. He's been a tremendous lift and such a knowledgeable individual in this space. We've got a great team. So Brian, I cannot thank you enough, or Sheila, for letting us slip this hour of information to your team across the state. As you can tell, we're super excited about this space. So again, thank you so much. Presenters, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming to MDE and presenting, and to all of the co-presenters. I think I actually know somebody, Dr. Lee, that taught in that program from Lake Michigan College well before it was formalized. As you mentioned, it's been in place for a long time. So an excellent opportunity to help address our underserved areas, as you articulated so well, with our independent community college system, which serves our state well, and we want to make sure that we make sure everyone is included. So thank you for that great work. So it was our pleasure today. We look forward to rounding this up again in the fall. Michelle Cardano will make sure that this topic and video link, Lori, is in the Director Transition Guide. As many of you know, I'll be leaving my post on Friday, August 16th, and we have a very comprehensive transition guide. Many thanks to Michelle Cardano and Sheila Yacht, and we'll be adding this and the link to this so that this work can be carried through with the next director, because it's such important work. And as Mac mentioned, we are really starting to identify all the different areas and are very thankful to those of you with the depth of expertise to help all of us as we work with our students, because we want to give them the appropriate springboard from high school into their future training in the workforce to be successful. So everybody have a fantastic day, and hopefully the sun is shining in your area, because it's shining today in Lansing. Goodbye.
Thank you.